Yes. Right. Now, we have got today, Tuesday and Thursday. We got to get to the end of Marx and Engels. We will never leave them, of course. They will haunt you the rest of your lives. But we will not be reading them directly, only through other theorists after next Thursday. So, what we're going to do on Monday, not Monday, Tuesday. Next Tuesday, we're going to ransack what we do today. That is, we're going to present the theory of the rise and fall of capitalism today, Engels' theory. We're going to ransack that, and then we are going to, that's going to lead us directly into Marx and Engels' theory of class struggle, and you will find that in the Communist Manifesto, and I've given you pages 473 to 483, so that, no, that's not good. Okay. 473 to 483. 473 to 483. And then we are going to... What's going on with everybody today? Then we will look at Marx and Engels' theory of the state. And I've given you... you are being force-fed with pages here. 186, 188, 711, 713, and the all-important 475. So that's what we will do on Tuesday. And on Thursday we will examine Marx's own theory of his own summary of his own theory. And we will see how he understands what he was up to. Okay, any questions? Yes. Rebels against mode of exchange. Straight from Social Utopian Scientific. Okay. You're Heather, right? No, who are you? Bridget, damn it. It's no good. I have to start taking photographs of people. Okay, you're Bridget. Now where's Heather then? You Heather? No, Heather's not here. See, this is what's trouble, because people are coming and going all the time. All right. Yes, I mustn't talk to myself. Summary. It's going to have to be a short summary today, because I really want to present to you on 3 boards. We're going to go from board 1 to board 2 to board 3. And I'm going to have to rub this off. Excuse me, Matthew. So we're going to go from board 1, 2 and 3. So, summary. I want to, first of all, let me say that we did talk about the origins of, we talked about the transition from feudalism to capitalism, and that involved 2 processes. One process, remember, was the rise of this new mode of production, capitalism, the creation of wage labor on the one side, and of movable industrial capital on the other. And that's on pages, I've given you a diagram of that. It's on pages 176 to 186 in the German ideology. And so that's one story. How in the towns, in the Middle Ages, in the 13th, 14th, 15th centuries in Europe, an emergent bourgeoisie capitalist class on the one side and the creation of a working class on the other provided the foundations for this new mode of production capitalism. On the one side. And on the other side is the question of why feudalism couldn't maintain itself, couldn't sustain itself. And we argued last time, and again, there's not a lot of evidence in Marx and Engels, and certainly not in Social Utopian Scientific, but the idea is that feudal relations of production, the relations between lords and serfs, was of a hereditary, static character, of a hierarchical, inflexible character that did not allow the development of the forces of production, and in particular did not allow the development of factory production. So that's the story of the transition from feudalism to capitalism. It's an important story because it's the only other transition Marx and Engels really talk about, and they don't talk about in great deal other than the transition from capitalism to communism. And it actually looks like a very different transition. These 2 transitions look very different, as we will see. But we don't know actually in Marx and Engels' theory a lot about this first transition from feudalism to capitalism. What we do know from Marx and Engels is that what we do have in Marx and Engels is a theory of capitalism, why it rises and then falls. And to develop that theory, Marx and Engels have to first give a representation of, a model of capitalism. And they do this in 2 ways, as we talked about last time. The first way was to compare capitalism with feudalism. And what we saw from that comparison, and I drew you a beautiful picture last time, what we saw is that under feudalism, the direct producer, the serf, gives up what? Labor to the lord in the form of rent. And in exchange, receives access to subsistence agriculture, subsistence plots, strips as they were called. So essentially, it was a relation of lord to serf in which surplus was transparent, it was visible, the surplus was separated in space and time from the necessary labor. It was clear that the serfs were exploited, and therefore that exploitation had to be justified and sometimes forcibly imposed. Under capitalism, by contrast, we found that the direct producer was no longer had access to the means of subsistence, as the serf did, but actually had to sell not labor, but labor power, that is the capacity to work, sell the labor power for a wage to the capitalist, and in return the laborer presents his or her labor power and in principle offers up that capacity to the capitalist, and the capitalist then has got to do something very difficult. Extract more labor from the labor power than is embedded in the wage. And that is the basis of exploitation under capitalism. That the value imparted to the product by the labourer is greater than the value contained in the wage. And that surplus value, is actually not clearly separated from the necessary labour. Whereas under feudalism it's all very clear, we have necessary and surplus labour. Under capitalism we have surplus and necessary, but there's no clear distinction. In fact, it appears under capitalism as though we are paid for the entire time we spend working for the capitalist. But in practice, Marx and Engels says it's only a proportion of the working day. So, out of that, we develop the theory of capitalism. But that's one dimension. That is basically the theory, the foundations that we find in wage, labour and capital. Now Engels, and now this is my third point of the summary, but the second comparison between, in a sense, capitalism and pre-capitalism. There is another comparison going on, another heuristic model, another way of identifying the distinctive feature of capitalism for Engels in Socialism, Utopian Scientific. And that distinctive way is the comparison of capitalist production with individual production. Capitalist production with individual production. Capitalist production and individual production. Engels is saying that there existed, and indeed there existed a form of production in which the individual appropriated a product that is produced by an individual. So we have the individual craft worker produces the entire pin, appropriates the pin and sells the pin. So we have the individual producer producing him or herself the whole pin. That's the Smithian world. As opposed to capitalism, the capitalist mode of production in which we have individual appropriation, or as Engels calls it, private appropriation, by the owner of the pin factory, we're now in a factory, versus socialized production. That is factory production in which labourers specialize in their different tasks, making the pin stalks, the pin heads, putting the pin heads on the pin stalks. So that is a socialized production. It's a collective action. One individual does not produce the whole pin. It's the collective labourer that produces the pin, and is appropriated, however, by the individual capitalist. And this is what Engels says the contradiction that contains within it the germ of all the antagonisms of capitalism. The antagonism between private appropriation and socialized production. Private appropriation and socialized production. So those are the two comparisons. The first comparison, feudalism and capitalism, delivers the whole idea of exploitation under capitalism and how it's invisible. And the second comparison shows us how, in fact, capitalism, in its very, very definition as individual private appropriation and socialized production, contains within it a contradiction that will reveal itself in the dynamics of capitalism. So are these two comparisons clear? One with feudalism and the other with individual production. Great. Now, I'm going to start my picture. The first way, and we discussed it last time, is from page 706. The first manifestation of private appropriation and socialized production, the first manifestation is what? Anders. The first manifestation is organized production on the one side and anarchy on the market on the other. So this is organized or planned production, and believe me, we're going to get to the other end here by 3:30. Do you know where we'll be when we're over there? 3:30. Very good. Just seeing who's awake. Not 3:30 tomorrow. Yeah, by 5 we'll be over there, but where will we be over there? No, beyond there. That's right, Chelsea. Okay, organized production versus anarchy of the market. What is this anarchy of the market? What is the anarchy of the market? It is, hands up, we did it last time, Jenny? Competition. The anarchy of the market is effectively the competition among whom? First and foremost, amongst capitalists. Competition amongst capitalists. And it is that competition amongst capitalists that impels capitalism forward, but also creates a sort of chaos, because nobody knows which capitalist is going to invent which new machine at what time. So all capitalists are panicked that somebody else will make a jump on them, advance their technology, and be able to sell things more cheaply and still make a profit, and put all the others out of business, except only if, they'll put the others out of business if the others don't follow suit. Okay, Anarchy of the market. But here, the paradox is that in the factory, everything is planned, organized. It's like, your vision of the, I don't know, people, even McDonald's has got us all planned. It's like an assembly line. That's the imagination you should have of a factory, of an assembly line, an organized assembly line. Or a bureaucracy. Go to Sprout Plaza. Go to Sprout Hall, and you will find bureaucratic organization, planned carefully. Yeah. Planned for your misery. Yes, right. Yes. Planned to be inaccessible. You're right. Right. So this competition in the marketplace combined with a planned production leads to what? Come on. Leads to what? Competition among capitalists leads to what? Don't jump. But first, what does it lead to? What does the competition among capitalists lead to, Kristen? What does it lead to? What does the competition among capitalists lead to? Panic, yes. And that leads to what? Innovation. Yes, you want to say? Well, eventually you're jumping the gun, but one step at a time. First it leads to, some sort of capitalists innovate to make an advance over other capitalists, to make more profit than other capitalists. So they introduce new machines, and new machines do what? They increase production. What else do new machines do? Yes, Josephine. They de-skill the workers. So there's what Marx and Engels call simplification or de-skilling. Okay, and what else? Yes, Greg?
Lower wages.
Eventually, but before we get to lower wages, why the lower wages? Christy? Competition among workers. Why does that get more intense?
Because capitalists can hire anyone they want.
Yes, because they can hire anybody because it's de-skilled, right? But also something else is happening, Lauren, right?
Machines.
Right. There's the expulsion of workers into the reserve army of unemployed to unemployment. So unemployment increases. So we have new machines, simplification, de-skilling, unemployment. All these in combination lead to lower wages. All in combination lead to lower wages. And, well, I'm going to put increased unemployment. Well, that's fine, lower wages. We missed one other way that Marx talks about in the way of reducing wages. What was the other way? Yes, Jessica? Right, so family labour. Somewhere we can put that in here. Spreading the wage amongst several members of the family. Okay. All that leads to lower wages. So what is happening here is actually, and then this is a next point, and we've really gone over this already quite a few times. What happens as a result of this? Not universal opulence, but polarization. Polarization of wealth and poverty. And actually, to return to the text, if you look on page 708, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 lines from the top, everybody got their tucker out. Okay. Lauren, are you there? Can you read it out for us? That's 10 lines. It's just about, it's a long sentence. Accumulation.
Accumulation of wealth at one pole is, therefore, at the same time, accumulation of misery, agony, toil, slavery, ignorance, brutality, mental degradation, at the opposite pole, i.e., on the side of the class that produces its own product in the form of capital.
Very good. Basically, what happens is that through this competition, the working class becomes poorer, at the same time the capitalist becomes richer. Polarization of wealth and poverty. Okay, very good. And that leads to page 705. And I'm going to be jumping around in this text a little bit. If we look on top of page 705, 2, 4, 6 lines from the top, in italics, this is point number 3, which was really now already covered. The contradiction between the socialized production and capitalist appropriation, socialized production and capitalist appropriation, now manifests itself in an antagonism between the capitalists and the workers. The contradiction between socialized production and capitalist appropriation manifests itself as the antagonism of proletariat and bourgeoisie. And that antagonism between capitalist class and working class is called what? Class struggle. Very good. Okay, so I'm going to put class struggle down here. Okay. Very good. Very good. By the way, if we get to